Southern California High School was a prestigious institution, known for its academic excellence and students from wealthy families. Among its students was John, a boy from one of the richest families in the area. His father was a powerful businessman, and his mother, who was a former model, hosted extravagant parties that were the talk of the town. John, however, was known for different reasons within the walls of the school. He was notorious for his bullying behavior. He had blonde hair and bright blue eyes. His wealth gave him a sense of entitlement, and he carried himself in confidence and arrogance. One of John's favorite targets was Mark. Unlike John, Mark came from a poor family. Despite his circumstances, Mark was determined to go to school. However, he struggled to afford textbooks and other essential materials. He often wore the same faded clothes, which made him an easy target for John's cruel jokes. "Hey, Mark, did you steal those clothes from a trash bin?" John would tease, surrounded by his circle of friends who laughed at his every joke. Mark tried to ignore the ridicules, focusing on his studies and hoping that his hard work would eventually pay off. But John's bullying was relentless. It wasn't just the verbal abuse. John would often spill ink on Mark's homework, push him to the wall, and oftentimes slap him without any cause. Teachers and administrators turned a blind eye to John's behavior and dismissed all complaints against him because of his father's generous donations to the school. The bullying reached its peak when John orchestrated an incident that left Mark humiliated in front of the entire school. It was a rainy afternoon, and Mark had just finished his exam. As he walked out of the classroom, John and his friends surrounded him. "Let's see if the poor boy can swim," John ridiculed and pushed Mark into a muddy water. The laughter that followed were the final straw for Mark. That evening, Mark sat in his room, drowned in sorrow. He couldn't endure the constant torment any longer, so he decided to quit school, giving up on his dreams of becoming a lawyer. Mark found a job washing cars at Mr. Kirk's car wash. It was draining, but it provided a modest income. One of his regular customers was a kind-hearted lawyer called Mr. Anderson. Over time, Mr. Anderson noticed Mark's diligence and intelligence. Curious about the young boy's story, he started a conversation one day. "You're too smart to be washing cars, Mark. Why aren't you in school?" Mr. Anderson asked. Mark sighed, then poured out his story. Mr. Anderson listened intently and saw potential in Mark. "Mark," he said, "how would you like to go back to school? I can arrange for a scholarship at a good institution. You deserve a chance to pursue your dreams." Mark was stunned. With Mr. Anderson's help, he enrolled in a new school, one where he could start fresh. It wasn't easy. He had to catch up on lost time and work twice as hard as his peers. But Mark was determined. Years passed, and Mark's dedication paid off. He excelled academically and earned a full scholarship to college and eventually law school. His journey was far from easy, but he graduated at the top of his class and began his career as a lawyer, inspired by the man who had given him a second chance. Meanwhile, John's life went in a different direction. He continued his easy life, moving smoothly through school and into a top university without much effort. His attitude stayed the same, and he treated his professors and colleagues with the same disrespect he had in high school. Even though he was intelligent, his arrogance often held him back. John followed in his father's footsteps and became a lawyer, joining a high-powered firm that handled some of the most lucrative cases in California. His intelligence, charm, and cunning won him many clients and success in the courtroom. One day, a case of national importance landed on John's desk. It was a high-profile robbery involving millions of gold bars stolen from the national reserves. The media attention on the case was huge, and the trial was scheduled to be broadcast on television. John enjoyed being in the spotlight and was excited at the chance to display his talents on a national stage. The trial started with great excitement and attention. The courtroom was packed, and cameras broadcasted every moment to viewers across the country. John represented the defendant and was confidently walking around the courtroom, giving dramatic speeches and questioning witnesses with a fancy style. The judge presiding over the case was a recent appointee to the Supreme Court. As the trial progressed, John couldn't shake the feeling that the judge's face seemed familiar, but he couldn't place where he had seen him before. The case was complex. The robbery had been meticulously planned, involving several insiders who had access to the national reserves. The defendant, a former security manager at the reserves, was accused of orchestrating the heist. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, including security footage, financial records, and testimonies from co-conspirators. John's defense strategy was to discredit the witnesses and create doubt about the integrity of the evidence. He employed every trick in the book, from theatrically questioning the credibility of the witnesses to presenting convoluted theories about alternative suspects. His unprofessional attitude was evident, as he frequently interrupted the prosecution, made sarcastic remarks, and displayed a general lack of respect for the court's procedures. The judge, Mark Anderson, maintained his composure throughout the trial. He made sure that the proceedings were fair and that the jury was not swayed by John's antics. As the trial drew to a close, it became evident that the evidence against John's client was overwhelming. Despite his best efforts, John couldn't secure an acquittal. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning with a guilty verdict on all counts. After pronouncing the judgment, Judge Anderson looked directly at John. There was a brief silence in the courtroom before he spoke. "Mr. John Thompson," the judge said, "do you remember me?" John's mind raced. The face was indeed familiar, but from where? "I am Judge Mark Anderson," the judge continued. "You might remember me from Southern California High School." John's eyes widened in shock. Memories of his school days, his bullying, and the poor boy he had tormented flooded back. He felt a wave of shame wash over him. Judge Anderson proceeded, "Life has a way of coming full circle. You may not have recognized me, but I remember you well. Your actions back then had a profound impact on my life." John struggled to find words. "Judge Anderson," John stammered, "I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. I was a terrible person, and I can't undo the past, but I hope you can forgive me." Judge Anderson looked at John for a moment before responding. "John, I accept your apology. What matters now is what you do going forward. Use this as an opportunity to change and make amends for your past." In a heartfelt public statement in the courtroom, John resigned. This event marked the beginning of a nationwide movement to combat bullying and promote kindness and respect in all schools across the country. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one.